currently.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Ordonez, and I'm here today on behalf of University Hospital Violence Intervention Program in Newark. I'm a proud resident of Newark, New Jersey, a graduate of Newark Public Schools, and of Rutgers University, Newark. Our city's history of violence sparked my passion in violence reduction and community development. Because of Newark's will to overcome our violence and prioritize community development, we're gathered here today to celebrate the pioneering efforts of our elected officials and to expand the reach of violence intervention programs across the state. First and foremost, I would like to thank Governor Murphy for his leadership on the efforts to reduce violence in our communities, and we must keep focused on this topic, and today's efforts will do just that. I would also like to thank Acting Governor Sheila Oliver and all the legislative sponsors for this, these important bills for the opportunity to speak today. I'm honored to share our experiences in Newark and humbled to be here today to celebrate the expansion of these important and innovative programs statewide. Currently, University Hospital's Violence Intervention Program is the first hospital-based violence intervention program in New Jersey. Since our inception in July 2017, our program has served 189 victims of violent crime. As a result of our interventions, we've limited incidents of recidivism of these 189 participants only to 3. University Hospital's Violence Intervention Program is a team approach. We closely partner with the Newark Community Street Team, a community-based violence reduction organization in Newark, to identify and intervene with University Hospital patients who are Newark and Irvington residents and have been victims of interpersonal violence. These victims of traumatic events include gunshot wounds, stabbings, and physical assaults. During these intense personal moments, our community outreach workers establish vital bonds with our participants as we move through the moments of survival and recovery. These bonds laid the groundwork that allowed the community outreach workers to meaningfully intervene with our patients and engage in serious lifestyle reconsiderations that extend beyond the physical boundaries of the hospital. These traumatic events can often serve as a catalyst to real and meaningful change. University Hospital's Violence Intervention Program links our patients with community-based services and supports, also promotes trauma-informed care for our community. Our HVIP model aims to address lifestyle factors that may contribute to a patient's victimization through individualized case plans for each participant. I'm very proud of the work that we do and the amazing team that we have at University Hospital. We have seen these programs work at University Hospital, which is why we're thrilled that today's bills will establish other community-based nonviolence and gun violence prevention programs, as well as create a hospital-based violence intervention program initiative in the Department of Health. Together, we can work to end violence in New Jersey. Thank you, Acting Governor Oliver, for allowing me to speak today. Thank you to all the elected officials involved in this effort for acknowledging this important work and for believing in our approach. Thank you for standing with us in this fight. It's now my privilege to introduce Acting Governor Sheila Oliver.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We planned to do bill signings on the package of bills that we're standing here today to provide commentary on. And here we are once again at a place we don't choose to be. Gilroy, California, Texas, Dayton, Ohio, 3 all-American legacy cities now linked by what is rapidly becoming the most all-American instances. In the span of just 1 week in our country, 32 people, 32 innocent people in these communities were senselessly murdered, and another 67 wounded by individuals, including those who held white supremacist beliefs, carrying high-powered weapons and bent on sowing domestic terror and inflicting as much pain as possible. 1 week in America, 99 people killed or injured, the result of gun violence. We cannot continue to be the only advanced country on this planet where such acts of domestic terrorism not only happen so regularly, yet elicit so little action from our national leaders beyond their muffled thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers aren't strong enough. It is well past the time for action in this nation. And beyond the mass shootings that capture our attention and tug at our hearts, right here in New Jersey, every day, gun violence has been tearing up our communities, especially in underserved communities of color. This past week, a 6-year-old girl was caught in the line of fire in Newark. And we are thankful to learn that her injuries are not fatal. And this is the constant fear and threat of everyday gun violence that cripples our communities. And in July, in Atlantic City, struck with a tragic wave of youth gun violence, where 3 teens were fatally shot in separate incidents, most recently the death of a 15-year-old girl. Our children should be doing things like playing with their friends, learning in school, getting prepared to go back to school. They should not be forced to live in fear of gun violence, nor should the educators that care for them during the course of a day. They shouldn't have to be subject to the lifelong trauma associated with their friends and families being shot. How often do we have to travel past the memorials, the flowers, the candles, the rest in peace signs that are erected? The bills that we are signing today will help cut gun violence off at the source through comprehensive hospital-based violence intervention programs that will educate, care for, and protect New Jersey residents to help save lives. They prove our determination to stop the violence through intervention programming. I am proud to serve with a governor who, when he assumed office in January 2018, made a commitment to punt the ball even further in the state of New Jersey. I'm also proud to have been a member of the New Jersey State Legislature, where many of the legislators who I'm standing with today worked incredibly hard to punt the ball forward. Ever since this administration took office, Governor Murphy and I, along with those legislators, and a committed group of community activists from one end of the state to the other, have worked to prove that common sense gun safety can bring about change for the better. We're not accepting gun violence in our communities in New Jersey with a shrug and a sigh of, oh well. We're taking it on with every fiber of our being. Governor Murphy promised to make gun safety a priority in New Jersey, and he has. And he has done so without hesitation, unlike the previous administration. That promise that he made has been kept, And we are again leading in this nation because the governor kept that promise by signing every comprehensive law that has been put on his desk. And because of the governor's commitment, our communities are safer and even stronger. These laws will work alongside the other laws the administration has enacted, among them universal background checks, prohibiting the type of high-capacity magazine that are used in acts of domestic terror, a strong, quote, red flag law to keep guns out of the wrong hands, and tough measures to crack down on gun trafficking and the proliferation of untraceable, quote, ghost guns. We have tremendous allies throughout this process, folks who worked both locally and nationally. I specifically would like to thank the team at the Gifford Courage to Fight Gun Violence, Gabby Giffords and Mark Kelly, and Nico Bacour, whose support has been invaluable from the beginning, and especially with the violence intervention bills I am proud to sign today. I share the governor's pride and resolve in making New Jersey a national leader in the fight against senseless gun violence. Today, with our hearts full of sorrow for Gilroy, El Paso, and Dayton, I am proud to take this action on behalf of the 9 million New Jerseyans who stand as one for safer communities and common sense. I'd like to thank all of our senators and assembly people who without hesitation signed on as primes on these bills. I'd like to thank our healthcare professionals and our hospitals who without hesitation have embraced the kinds of programs that David described here this afternoon. And I know that the governor will continue to work with all of you in the advocacy community and at the grassroots level to make certain that New Jersey remains one of the leaders in gun violence prevention in this country. And we will continue our efforts nationally to influence the course and direction that we go. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Judy Persicilli. This is my first day as the Acting Commissioner of Health. Acting Governor Oliver, legislative leaders, it's an honor to stand with all of you today. We all know the statistics. Each year, 38,000 people in the United States die as a result of gun violence. Nearly 85,000 more suffer non-fatal gun injuries. Gun violence is the leading cause of premature death in the United States. Nearly 3/4 of homicides in the state of New Jersey in 2017 were caused by firearms. Guns are responsible for 94% of homicides among the age group of 15 to 24. In 2017, firearm homicide death rate among blacks in New Jersey is shockingly higher, more than 40 times the rate of other racial and ethnic groups. This is a public health crisis, and it requires all of our resources, our political, public health and community leaders, our leaders of faith, our first responders, and our hospitals and healthcare providers, all of us. This requires all of us to join together to confront this challenge. The nurses and trauma surgeons who work in our emergency departments deal with the consequences of gun violence every day. They know that there are more than twice as many non-fatal firearm injuries as fatal injuries due to gun violence. As a nurse, a hospital executive, and now on my first day as Acting Health Commissioner, I know that the Department of Health and our hospital systems can play a vital, critical role in working to reduce this violence with hospital-based violence intervention programs. That's why the Department of Health welcomes this package of bills that Governor Oliver is about to sign. A recent study suggested that hospital emergency rooms across the country could play a greater role in reducing gun violence. There are about 25 hospital-based violence intervention programs around the country. And right now in New Jersey, only one at University Hospital. These bills will change that. I have witnessed firsthand the impact that hospital violence intervention programs can have on firearm victims during my time at University Hospital. These programs save lives. Hospital-based violence intervention programs provide counseling by trained intervention specialists who offer long-term case management, mentoring and follow-up assistance and support, and connection with community organizations. Meeting patients when they are most vulnerable, where they are at the bedside, and taking advantage of that teachable moment is life-saving. It saves lives. Counseling and support not only during their hospitalization, but also post-hospitalization, during the most vulnerable time for recidivism through retaliation or re-victimization, builds resistance and saves lives. It builds resilience. Counseling and support by hospitals in unique positions to help with that education and support is what these bills are about. We can all work together to reduce the likelihood of re-injury and retaliatory violence. This may be the victim's only connection to the healthcare system, and we need to seize that opportunity to help them overcome their trauma. With the support and follow-up of caseworkers, individuals that went through the program in Newark were empowered to succeed. Some getting GEDs, going on to college, and having greater job opportunities. These programs can reduce violence, lower societal costs, and protect and assist victims. These bills may change the trajectory of a victim's life, giving hope to the hopeless. These bills will save lives. As this weekend so tragically demonstrated, we all have to step up and do more to prevent the acts of violence that are now an everyday occurrence in our nation. Firearm violence is a public health crisis. New Jersey will be at the forefront in breaking the cycles of violence and retaliation and saving lives. It's an honor for me to be at this bill signing as my first public appearance as the Acting Commissioner of Health. Thank you, and now it's my privilege to introduce the Attorney General Graywall.
Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. I also want to start where Acting Governor Oliver started, by sharing my condolences with all those affected by this weekend's tragedies. This is not the first time our nation has suffered such incredible loss or faced such horrific evil. We've unfortunately grown all too familiar with the scourge of mass shootings, some of which are the result of the rising tide of hate and intolerance that we're seeing in this country, others of which defy any explanation at all, but all of which are made possible by easy access to assault weapons and other weapons of war. And it's not just the mass shootings. Gun violence affects communities all across our country, including right here in New Jersey each and every day. As public leaders, we have a moral obligation to do something about the gun violence sweeping our country. And in New Jersey, we actually are doing something. So I urge our nation's leaders to take a page from the New Jersey playbook, a playbook that treats this epidemic of gun violence for what it actually is, a public health crisis, and a playbook that focuses on prevention, on treatment, and enforcement. And when it comes to prevention, New Jersey has some of the strongest firearm safety laws in the nation. Laws like universal background checks and limits on assault rifles and large capacity magazines. Laws that keep dangerous weapons out of the hands of criminals and, yes, extremists. And I'm proud that Governor Murphy has tightened our laws in the past year and a half. But even the strongest laws have little effect unless you're willing to enforce them. At the AG's office, we're using all the tools given to us by the legislature and the governor to do just that. We've arrested violent gang members. We've shut down organizations, criminal organizations trafficking in ghost guns. And we've pursued online gun sellers that flout New Jersey's laws. With these efforts, we're showing everyone and the rest of the country what creative, aggressive law enforcement looks like. But treating gun violence like a public health crisis also means focusing on treatment, which is what we're here to do today. We need to give our communities and our youth the tools they need to interrupt endless cycles of violence. There are already organizations across our state doing this work, from schools to hospitals to community-based programs. They work with victims of gun violence day in and day out to end the vicious cycles of retaliation and repeat victimization. Violence interruption programs are one of our top priorities at the Attorney General's office, and I'm committed to partnering with these hospitals and groups by funding them, giving assistance to them. And the 3 bills that Acting Governor Oliver is signing this afternoon will give us even more tools to continue and to expand this work. I'm grateful to Governor Murphy and Acting Governor Oliver and the legislators behind me for their leadership on this issue. But as proud as I am of the work that we are doing here in New Jersey to solve this problem, we cannot do it alone. Our state's gun stat reports show that 83% of the crime guns recovered in New Jersey come from out of state. So Washington needs to step up and do its part to end and deal with this epidemic. And other states must do the same. We've created a model here in New Jersey that they can follow and should follow. And the time to do so is now because public safety demands nothing less. I want to thank the governor and Acting Governor Oliver for today's bill signing ceremony. Now it's my honor to introduce a partner in these efforts, and that's the Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police, Colonel Patrick Callahan. Colonel?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Governor Oliver, for just affording me a few minutes just to offer a few remarks. I put my emergency management cap on while I was just standing here thinking about what happened over this weekend, and whether that's a hurricane, whether that's a terrorist attack, that all hazards approach that we take and what's happening in this country is certainly, I think, rising to disastrous levels. And I think about the pillars of emergency management. I think about response. I think about mitigation. I think about prevention and preparedness. And that's what this legislation here today is about, those mitigation efforts. When it's flooding, we elevate houses down at the shore. That's mitigation. This counseling and this hospital-based intervention of violence to break that cycle is mitigation. It's preparedness. It's prevention. On the response side, the whole goal is to never have to respond again, right, to an active shooter. I think of that officer in Dayton, Ohio, who within 24 seconds engaged that subject with a patrol rifle. And although I think it's critical that we train our law enforcement officers, it somewhat is disheartening to me that the 117 troopers that graduated a couple weeks ago, their first week they spent doing active shooter training up at the Meadowlands because it's become such a reality, and the communities that say not here, not in our state, are now struggling with that. And it's certainly my hope that although we train all of our troopers to respond, that they will never, ever have to. And that's why legislation like Governor Oliver is going to sign today on the prevention side is so critical. And I'll just leave you with this, and it had nothing to do with the scheduling of this, but this morning the Attorney General and I sat up at State Police Headquarters for 2 hours with Juvenile Justice Commission residents, young teenagers who have been caught up in it, not only witnessed it, but were part of it. Some were victims to it. And around the table, whether it was a young girl or a young man, sat there and talked about their brother being shot, their brother being killed their loved ones being lost to gun violence, shot 17 times, and you could pick a city around the state. They were from all over, from Camden to Patterson to Trenton. As a Jersey trooper and as a father and a husband, it broke my heart to listen to how these young men and women have grown up. And I hope and trust that the legislation that Governor Oliver is going to sign in a few minutes does a lot and really impacts those lives. So no teenager ever has to sit there at State Police headquarters and tell me about their brother being shot 17 times. So I appreciate the opportunity, and it's now my privilege to introduce Senator Joseph Cryan from the 20th Legislative District. Senator.
Thanks, Superintendent. Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent and Governor Oliver, Acting Governor Oliver, I guess, which has a nice ring to it. Thank you, Governor, and thank you, General. Hope you all don't mind, but as we all stand here today, we stand here with an uncertainty about what's going on in our country and the violence and the things we're approaching and facing before us, as has been mentioned. To my moms in front of me who are here too often in times of crisis, I hope it's all right. Maybe we could just take a moment of silence for the victims that we thought of, and in your own hearts remember them in a special way. Thank you. And I hope none of you ever feel the way those families and ever have to go through the heroism that the mother who touched us all did this weekend. I wanted to tell you that why I was to sponsor these bills, because I didn't write them. The man who wrote them and the man who was the leader of this effort is from the Assembly, and I wanted to take a moment, thank the people behind me for what they did, but in particular I wanted to recognize our Majority Leader in the Assembly, Lou Greenwald, for your work here, Lou. I appreciate it very much. And the innovation in this bill, in these bills, and what they mean has been brought to you pretty directly. But I think what I wanted to share with you was from a previous life as a sheriff, where my crime scene unit would go out and you would ask about a victim, and more often than not they would say, and I hate to be biased here, but they would say, he was known to us, as we share in the law enforcement community, which meant he was a victim or a shooting or was involved in violence before. And you heard the stats that Michael gave you in the opening of this, that 189 and now down to 3 folks of recidivism. Those numbers, if you have an opportunity to look, were much higher before this program and are much higher. This is a huge effort, and starting and being a part of what I believe is an initial opportunity to change the lives of people is a huge, huge move in a positive direction for the state of New Jersey. I'll share with you a story I had from a Newark police officer. We were at a wake, and he was on scene at a shooting in Newark on 18th and Stuyvesant, a couple blocks where I grew up, a couple blocks from where I grew up. The young man was on his knees. He had been shot twice. I know you guys know this story. The names are only different. Was shot twice, was clearly bleeding out, and no ambulance and no doctor was going to save him. Had his cell phone out, and he was asking, who shot you? Think about that for a moment. On his knees, cell phone out, trying to dial the phone, with a law enforcement officer saying, who shot you? Let me get you justice. Let me get your family. Let me help you. His response was something I can't really share on a microphone, but it wasn't polite, as he tried to dial his friend to let his friend know who shot him. I want you to think about that for a minute. The violence on the streets is real, whether it's an officer telling a sheriff he was known to us, or a police officer in Newark sharing a story of someone who would rather bleed out than go through the process that it should be to find their killer. Take that for a moment and understand how important these programs are. And for those that say they're invasive, or for those who say that there's no reason to do that, and I'll say it because I hear it, there's no reason for them, if they all want to shoot themselves, why don't we let them? Because I hear that too. And that is unacceptable in New Jersey, around this country, around this world. When 90% of the folks that are victims of gunshot wounds are black or brown, with the majority being from 5 cities in the state of New Jersey: Jersey City, Newark, Patterson, Camden, and Trenton. It is unacceptable that we don't do something. And today, thanks to the leadership, mostly of the people behind me, and a senator or two, hopefully we help change that. I'd like to leave you with this in an uncertain time when we all kind of wonder, what do we do next? But are we desensitized to this? Because I think all of us kind of wonder, have we lost our feel? Will this pass tomorrow? I just want to read you a couple names and see if they ring a bell with you. LaQuinta Brown, Mary Louise Gale, Alexander Gusev, Catherine Nixon, Rich Nettleton, Christopher Rapp, Joshua Hardy, Keith Cox, Missy Langer, Bobby Williams, and Bert Snelling. I don't know if they ring a bell to any of you. From the looks on your face, I don't think so. Matter of fact, from the looks around the room, I would say probably not. The acting governor mentioned 3 shootings, Gilroy and the 2 over the weekend, El Paso and Dayton. These folks were the victims of Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach was May 31st. It was 36 days ago. And even us, the people in this room, who are most active, more concerned than most, probably can't remember a victim. And tonight, in your own special way, maybe more than a moment of silence here, we can remember the victims of violence and hopefully today prevent some of that for the future. It's now my honor and my privilege to introduce my esteemed colleague from the New Jersey Senate, Senator Teresa Ruiz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to take this opportunity to thank the prime sponsor in the Senate for allowing me to jump on as a co-prime, and it was a no-brainer to me. I love ranking 1 through 10 in any endeavor, but certainly not in the top 5 in a district that I represent that is really turning the corner in economic development and educational strides and improving the quality of life, and yet is threatened by the veracity of what bullets can do to any community at any given moment. We have had partnership from every level of public safety come into the fold. We have had an administration with this governor and acting Governor Oliver put forth bills to protect and to be proactive when it comes to gun violence, a critical public health crisis in my neighborhood. And today we include a different level of first responders. One right in there when the action is happening to save a life or to connect family to resources. To Assemblyman Lou Greenwald, thank you for coming to Newark, for visiting the only program that exists in the state of New Jersey. To the Commissioner of Health, who was leading that institution just most recently. To the new president of University Hospital, who houses that program that too often in their emergency room sees the true epidemic that is facing our neighborhoods. Thank you for bringing this to light, for making policy happen. To Acting Governor Oliver, for seeing the critical importance of signing this bill so that we can put words into immediate action. New Jersey is striving. New Jersey is growing. New Jersey is sending a powerful national message that we won't tolerate this. But the truth of the matter is that New Jersey sits in an area whose boundaries are way too close with other states that are loose when it comes to gun law and protection. And so while we sit and we tweet and we put Facebook posts that we ask for prayers and send our heartfelt messages to families that have been impacted across this country, we have to send a much greater and stronger message to this president who has been at the culpability of setting flame to coals filled with hate. That when he stood before this national audience this morning, he listed several episodes that we do have to work on. Yes, the internet is a dangerous place. And yes, games can create violence in children. And yes, you know, we need red flag laws, but there was no conversation about universal background checks, and there was no conversation about stores that sell weapons that CNN reporters who had been covering war for decades had never seen in their lifetime of reporting. That when the episode happened in El Paso, that individual came for people who look like me, because we are sitting in an era that is filled with hate and venom. That yes, mental health issues have to be resolved, but that we have to take responsibility for our own action. Senator Cryan alluded to the mother who threw herself on the 10-week-old. And then the husband who threw himself on the wife. That child will never know their parents. That when you hear CNN over and over again, the audio, run, Mia, run. At a time when families are going to shop for back-to-school items. We had this discussion before. And as families, when you have a young child, sometimes you go to the mall depending on the temperature or how it is, because you feel safe and you want to walk around. Or when it's sweltering outside, just weekends ago, I went with my family because I felt like she could run around and it was in an air-conditioned environment. Never thinking for a moment that at any second, someone could take that away from us. And so New Jersey has stood up, but this country has to stand up. We took no action after Sandy Hook, and I hope now that the congressional leaders and that Washington will wake up. This is about Americans. And you're right, hate has no place in America. But when it's filled with rhetoric of sending messages of go back home, what kind of example is this country leading with? To Acting Governor, thank you for your leadership. To Governor Murphy, to my colleagues, to the person who pioneered in creating this policy for putting this forth and bringing in another layer of first responders so we can connect trauma victims to resources. Trauma is a real thing that my children deal with in our neighborhoods. We deal with it in our schools, we deal with it in our communities, we deal with it in our churches. Today we take a first step on expanding a program that has seen a true outcome of reducing recidivism and empowering people to know and to move on to positive light. But there's so much work that can be done, and the state can't be alone. But I am grateful for the leadership of Assemblyman Lou Greenwald in leading this effort.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I want to thank my friends in the Senate for their kind words and recognition, but the truth of the matter is this is a team effort, and it is a team effort of all the people that have stood up here with us at press conference after press conference, and it is a team effort that we hope is not limited to New Jersey. I believe in the power of prayer, and we remember these families and these individuals in silent moments, silent prayer. I prayed last night. I prayed for my family. I prayed for these victims. I constantly pray for the families of Sandy Hook. When I met with them, it was an unforgettable experience. But last night I prayed for the people in Washington. What will it finally take, and that God will somehow inspire them to understand that this moment needs to be the last moment, and that there are simple things that we can do. We've passed in New Jersey legislation to deal with mental health background checks and to attack those people of domestic violence and people of propensity of violence to take guns away. We've dealt with the capacity of the type of weapon that causes mass destruction in seconds. But today, I think it's critically important that the focus is on the root of the problem. And I think it's so easy for so many of us to think that the root of this problem is the instrument, the weapon itself that causes it. But the truth of the matter is, the weapon is dangerous in the hands of people that want to do evil. What this legislation does to me that is so critically important and is proven from success in other states and at University Hospital in our backyard is that we can, at the bedside, as the commissioner said, not just heal the wounds of the victim, but maybe heal their hearts and minds. We know from statistical evidence, and the data does not lie, that a victim of violence is far more likely to be a victim again or to become a violent perpetrator themselves. But if we have access and the resources to, in real time, in the moment of the incident, let this individual know that hope is not lost, that opportunity exists, that there are people out there that are available and willing to help them, that they can understand that this is not through the fault of their own, but that they can actually be a vehicle of change, that we can help them with the resources necessary to get the mental health needs they need, the physical needs, as well as the economic needs met to change their course and the course of others. We have seen overwhelming statistical evidence in other states and at University Hospital that we can reduce the rate of recidivism by almost 400%. These numbers are powerful, and it will have the effect of changing lives. You know, we are so focused on maybe disarming individuals, and the truth of the matter is, on the 217th day of this year, to have 255 mass shootings around this country, one less than a mile from where we stand this weekend. The truth of the matter is we can do better. And in the greatest country on the face of this earth, where we have the highest level of violence with guns, the truth of the matter is we can do better. But at the end of the day, we have within our capacity, while New Jersey cannot do it alone, New Jersey does have the ability on its own to touch these victims in a real way, in a significant way, that can forever change the course of violence in their families' lives and ultimately affect the lives of untold families across this state and maybe across this country. I will tell you that my hope is, and I know there's a lot of talk from groups around the country, that legislation becomes a template and is copied. I hope nothing more than that this legislation becomes a template and is copied and plagiarized by states around this country and ultimately by the federal government. This does not threaten anybody's constitutional rights. It improves the quality of life and the life and liberty of victims and families going forward. And I want to thank all the groups that are here. I want to thank the groups that have just been at our side, whether it's the Brady Foundation or Moms Demand Action, and all the work that you have done. Your voices bring power to the pen and the paper and the legislation that moves and is ultimately signed here today by my friend Sheila Oliver. And for those of you not to make this isn't a partisan statement, I think this is a factual statement. Elections matter. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I would love nothing more than to support our Republican colleagues around the country who would get behind this legislation and say enough is enough. This is not a partisan statement, but elections do matter. So with that, I'd like to introduce my friend and someone who is new to the legislature, but is dealing with this in very real time in the streets of this district. And as I said, less than a mile away from here, from where we stand right now, Assemblywoman Reynolds Jackson has had to deal with this reality. And unfortunately, some of you asked me this morning, was this press conference scheduled because of the events this weekend? The tragedy is no, it was not. This was scheduled last week because we believe that this will have an impact. But day after day, when there's 255 mass shootings in 217 days, it's very hard to pick the day where there isn't an event that is triggering this. But we hope that this legislation has the impact to bringing this to an end. So I'd like to introduce my friend, the Assemblyman.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you to the leadership here, to Acting Governor, to the AG's office, to our state troopers, and from our capital city of Trenton here. We've heard these horrific stories from El Paso to Dayton, and it just serves us as a reminder of the domestic terrorism that is happening right here in the United States today. Hate has no home in America, and we can't tolerate this senseless gun violence, and we must stop. When I think about all of the acts of violence that have happened, and I think about all the people and families that I know, to know that this legislation is going to have an impact on them so that they can receive help before they go home is an amazing opportunity for us here at the legislature to make sure that it happens. When we know what happens when they go home, when they go back to their schools, when they go back to the playground, when they talk to their friends, that's not the type of counseling we want them to have. They need the professional treatment. They need to have ongoing services, not just a steady, not just here one stop and gone, but something that is ongoing, that is going to have a meaningful impact, so that we know when we get to the Juvenile Justice Commission that they won't be there, or there won't be a time when we need that commission any longer. We have to continue to work. I can say that New Jersey has done the right thing here, and I just want to continue to work with everyone. And again, I thank you so much for your leadership, and to everyone. This is just, I can't say enough how important it is that we got it right in New Jersey, and I'm so very proud to be a part of this bill. Introducing my esteemed colleague from the 14th Legislative District, Dan Benson.
I get to back cleanup, and I have to say, I'm just in awe by the words and actions that we've seen here. It's been said, and I want to thank Acting Governor Oliver and my colleagues in the Senate and in the Assembly, but particularly Majority Leader Lou Greenwald for his leadership, not only on sensible gun control, but really looking how do we keep moving the ball forward, as Governor Oliver said, to find that next thing that's going to work. It's important to remember that this program is an evidence-based program that saves lives. We know it works, and that's why we're doing it. We want to make sure it is something that we can see all across New Jersey to save lives. We know this violence, although it may center in our urban centers, really knows no boundaries. It affects all of us in New Jersey and in all of our communities. I serve on the board of a federally qualified health center known here in Trenton as Henry J. We were meeting for our annual board retreat this Saturday, just down the street on West State Street here. And when we talk about trauma-informed care, when we talk about not asking that question of what happened to you, but not asking the question what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you, it really starts changing that conversation about how do we change lives, how do we save lives, how do we break that cycle of violence and intervene. And you know, I've worked with our colleagues here before on violence to our healthcare workers, and I'm happy to see representatives of labor that represent our nurses and our healthcare workers here today, because they've been on the front line of this violence too, and they're tired of seeing the bloodshed and the death, and seeing people come in not just once, but multiple times. And they want to see the end, and that's why they're here supporting this legislation that's about to be signed. It takes everyone, and that's why I'm glad to see so many different representatives of different groups and all the support from all different aspects, whether it's law enforcement or healthcare or education. That's how we're going to get it done. That's how we're going to make lives saved. That's how we're going to make those hopes and prayers and thoughts actually have meaning, and that those lives aren't lost in vain by saving the next life and hopefully preventing that next tragedy through bills like this. Thank you so much.
And with that, we're going to sign the bills. The first bill, 3301, establishes the Hospital-Based Violence Intervention Program Initiative in the New Jersey Department of Health. And Michael, thank you. And Senator Cryan, you balance law enforcement with humanistic compassion. And thank you. You just stepped out. Senator Ruiz. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Senator. And those of us who have lived in the legislature know that Assemblyman Greenwald took this on way before national focus going back over a decade. And Lou, we have benefited from the work you've invested. Thank you. Thank you, Assemblywoman. Thank you. Thank you, Assemblyman Benson. Commissioner Persicelli, thank you. To our Attorney General, thank you. Thank you very much. Colonel Callahan, thank you for all that you do. And in absentia, we want to recognize and thank Nico Bakur, who is the Legislative Director for the Giffords Foundation. And Shirley Conroy from Moms Demand Action. And, you know, I want to thank Moms Demand Action nationally. Their mobilization and their communication network, within less than 24 hours, the moms assembled at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and demanded action. And you better believe they will flood the halls on Capitol Hill until action is had. We will. Yes. And Shirley, I would like you to say a few words, if you would.
I was in Washington this weekend, and when they made the announcement on Saturday, and when we were all in front of the White House and marching down the street, it was very emotional, and there were so many people there on the streets who were giving us thumbs up and honking, and it was just so touching. But I want to say something about this pen. I didn't realize till today that I was getting this pen, and it's not really for me. I brought 4 students in to testify before the Health Committee back in March, and I want to give this to them, dedicate this to them, because they told their stories. They have suffered the trauma. They live in Camden. And their stories, I told them over and over again, touched the people on that committee and helped to get this law passed. So thank you for this. I will share that with them.
And the second bill that we are enacting today is 3312, Senate Bill 3312, requires certain hospitals to provide hospital-based or hospital-linked violence intervention programs in order to be designated as a level 1 or level 2 trauma center. And I'd like to thank all of the sponsors for that bill as well. And the last bill that we are signing into enactment today is Senate Bill 3323. Requires VVCOs, victim counseling services, to partner with trauma centers to refer certain victims to violence intervention programs. I think it's a proud day for us in Trenton that we are bucking the norm nationally, and we will continue to do more. Thank you very much. And And if anyone has any questions, we will entertain your questions now. Yes.
Is there a time frame on when these programs will start? Is there a hospital that's designated as the next hospital to get one of these programs?
Well, if you will note in the legislation, any hospital in the state that wants to be or aspires to be a level 1 or level trauma 2, a level 2 trauma center must establish these programs. After this is the first day on the job of our Commissioner of Health, and Judith Persicelli will be working with hospitals across the state to replicate these programs. Yes. Matt?
Yeah, I heard a lot of talk about, well, not a lot, but I heard some talk about statistics. Can someone refer us to what kind of statistics there are in terms of how these programs, either in New Jersey or in other states, how they work and how they have reduced violence?
The governor has a special advisor, on gun violence. Bill Kastner is with us here today, and I don't know if Bill has any national data that he could share with us. If not, I'm sure our Attorney General might also be able to do that. So Bill may have gone out. Attorney General?
I don't have the statistics handy, but I think you need look no further than the success that University Hospital has with these programs, reducing the gun shot recidivism rate in their own hospital, and I think that's proof of concept, as the Assemblyman alluded to as well. So I think we've seen it work here. As far as national statistics, I don't have those handy, but we could get those to you. Yep.
Thank you. I'd also like to add, which I'm sure Colonel Callahan can attest to, for those municipal police departments or other communities that have erected gunshot detection equipment in their communities, we know that that is also a way that law enforcement can have rapid response when guns are fired in their communities. Yes?
Yes, you mentioned the violent incidents that take place in Atlantic City in the last couple of months. I know that city has curfews in place right now. I just wanted to see if you had any comment on those policies.
I do, and you know that myself, my staff, we spend a significant amount of time in Atlantic City because we have the Municipal Stabilization and Revitalization Act, and this Department of Community Affairs has oversight responsibility in AC. You all know that Jim Johnson has been serving as an advisor to the governor on addressing the social and economic challenges that exist in Atlantic City. Jim Johnson, as you know, as a former assistant treasurer, had the ATF as part of his portfolio when he was assistant treasurer. We have been spending a great deal of time addressing the quality of life for young people in Atlantic City. Based on Jim's work, we have identified that there are approximately 10,000 young people living in Atlantic City, a city that has a population of about 38,000. By having a group of stakeholders come to the table, we've been able to provide jobs to 400 young people this summer. We have been able to work as a partner with Stockton University, expanding opportunities. I think the issue in the city of Atlantic City is access to social and economic, educational, and cultural opportunity for the young people that live there. For a long time, there's been no access to employment for a lot of young people in Atlantic City. But we implemented something called a Neighborhood Coordinating Police Initiative. We have over 20 people that are now doing neighborhood policing. And they are people who have been hired into our police department to eventually become police officers who live in the very neighborhoods that they are patrolling. But we know what has to be done in Atlantic City, as many of the other cities across our state that are experiencing gun violence. And at the end of the day, it really gets to be broader investment in education, access to employment and higher education opportunity, and I am not going to leave off the list housing. As the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs, I know that substandard housing conditions for disadvantaged communities also leads to violence. So yes, we are addressing all of those things in Atlantic City.
Yeah, the question was specifically about the curfews that have been.
Yes, we've implemented the curfews, and I think that that is a good thing. Yes, sir.
Governor, this is a bit off topic, but I was wondering, were you aware of raises to 8 eBay transit executives?
That is off topic, and today I am focused on gun violence and the bills we are signing here today. Mhm. Yes.
Governor, in 2010, the New Jersey State Police reported that over 90% of the nearly 700 people involved in shooting incidents were recidivist offenders. Do you believe that this program would help them, or do you believe that the recidivist offenders should be serving longer jail sentences?
I believe that this program is going to help offenders. If you will think about the bills that we signed today, they're designed to begin to engage people who have been victims in terms of the lifestyle that they have been leading. I think that it was Colonel Callahan or the AG who indicated they're known to us. We know who has a tattoo of a teardrop coming down their cheek. We know some of the graffiti that we see around the cities in the large cities, those 5 cities that Commissioner Persicelli identified. We know how to identify and assist and help. We know the situation in terms of a mom needing to relocate her family to another neighborhood because the family is a target of retaliation. All of those issues are the kinds of issues we hope to address when we have victims in healthcare institutions, 10 weeks in a hospital, loss of limbs, etc. So that is the perfect place, as the commissioner said, to begin to try to redirect people's lifestyles. And I think if we are successful in doing that, that's where the issue of recidivism comes in. Because if I am a victim of gang violence, if I am the victim of some other neighborhood dispute, if my only option is to return back to that neighborhood or to have the pressure placed on me to continuing my participation with that gang affiliation, the likelihood is I have no way out. There was once a movie called No Way Out. And I think that's what the counseling that these programs are going to provide will do. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.